Wife's brother wore an identical tuxedo to our wedding, then I caught him cheating on his wife at a coffee shop and found out my wife knew about the affair. I'm a 42-year-old construction manager who married my wife Rachel 4 years ago. Rachel comes from what everyone in town calls the perfect family. Her parents have been married for 45 years and still hold hands when they walk. Rachel has 2 brothers who couldn't be more different from each other. The older brother is Marcus, 44. He's a high school football coach, married to Olivia, 40, for 12 years with 3 daughters aged 10, 8, and 6. Marcus is what most people would call a family man, coaches his daughter's soccer teams on weekends, takes them camping during summer breaks, and puts in extra hours at school fundraisers to make sure his family has everything they need. The younger brother is Ethan, 35, who works as a freelance photographer. He travels a lot for work, taking pictures of wildlife and landscapes for nature magazines. He's always been the free spirit of the family, with his long hair and stories about sleeping under the stars in remote mountain ranges. He recently got engaged to Lucia, a botanist he met during an assignment in Costa Rica. When I first started dating Rachel 6 years ago, I noticed something odd about her family's dynamics. On our 3rd date, I took Rachel to a local brewery I'd discovered. While we were sampling different beers, I spotted a man with sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, sitting in a corner booth, constantly looking in our direction. I pointed him out to Rachel, suggesting we might want to leave if this person was following us. Rachel squinted, then burst out laughing. She waved at the person, who immediately ducked behind a menu. Rachel turned to me and said there was nothing to worry about. We continued our date, but that mystery person stayed in my mind. It wasn't until months later, when I was officially introduced to her brother Marcus, that I recognized him as the stalker from the brewery. Apparently, the siblings had a habit of checking out each other's dates without introducing themselves. This was just the first glimpse into the unusually tight relationship between the 3 siblings. Rachel, Marcus, and Ethan shared every detail of their lives with each other, daily calls, group texts that never stopped buzzing, and weekly dinners that couldn't be missed for any reason. They knew each other's banking passwords, medical histories, and relationship problems before their own partners did. At first, I found this closeness charming. Coming from a fractured family myself, parents divorced when I was 7, step-siblings I rarely speak to, I admired their bond. But as my relationship with Rachel progressed, the charm wore off. Rachel would tell her brothers about our arguments before we had even finished having them. When I received a medical diagnosis for a minor condition, Marcus called me with advice before I'd even told my own father. I raised my concerns with Rachel several times. She dismissed them, saying I couldn't understand because I didn't have siblings who actually cared about each other. There was some truth to that. My own brother hadn't even responded to my wedding invitation. So I backed off, accepting that this was part of the package deal with Rachel. Then came our wedding planning. Unlike most couples who fight over venue choices and guest lists, Rachel and I worked together seamlessly. We both wanted a medium-sized ceremony at a local vineyard, agreed on a reasonable budget, and even liked the same style of decorations. The planning process actually brought us closer together. I thought I'd found someone who truly understood partnership. The wedding day arrived, and everything was perfect, until Marcus showed up in a tuxedo identical to mine. Not similar, identical. Same designer, same cut, same boutonniere. When I first saw him at the vineyard, I thought someone was playing a prank. Rachel beamed when she saw us standing together. During her vows, she included a special section thanking Marcus for always being the example of the kind of husband she wanted, and how fitting it was that the 2 most important men in her life should look like twins today. I stood there, listening to my bride talk about another man during our wedding vows. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Olivia, Marcus's wife, stared straight ahead with a fixed smile. My parents exchanged glances. Even Rachel's parents looked embarrassed. At the reception, I pulled Rachel aside and asked why she hadn't told me about the matching tuxedos. She looked genuinely confused by my question. In her mind, this was a wonderful surprise that I should appreciate. When I explained that I felt upstaged at my own wedding, she told me I was overreacting and that I didn't understand family traditions. The tuxedo incident cast a shadow over our honeymoon. We argued repeatedly about boundaries and family involvement. Rachel finally admitted that Marcus had always wanted a formal wedding, but when he married Olivia, they had eloped because they couldn't afford a big ceremony. Olivia had gotten pregnant shortly after they started dating, and they rushed to get married before the baby arrived. Marcus had always regretted not having wedding photos and a proper reception. So Rachel had decided to share our wedding day with her brother, giving him the experience he had missed. She couldn't understand why this bothered me. After all, she reasoned, it didn't take anything away from our marriage. Ethan reached out to me after the wedding, apologizing for his sister's behavior. He explained that while he loved his siblings, he recognized that their closeness sometimes crossed normal boundaries. Olivia also texted me, offering to meet for coffee and compare notes on marrying into the family. Those gestures meant a lot, and I decided to move forward and try to make the marriage work. For the next few years, things improved. Rachel made a conscious effort to create boundaries with her brothers. We established a no family calls after 8 p.m. rule and a weekend trips without checking in policy. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Despite these improvements, I never fully got over what Marcus had done at our wedding. I watched how he interacted with Olivia at family gatherings, often talking over her, dismissing her ideas, and prioritizing his sister's opinions over his wife's. Olivia seemed to have accepted her position in the hierarchy, but I noticed how she would withdraw during family dinners, checking her phone or finding reasons to help in the kitchen. 3 months ago, I took a half day from work to meet some former college roommates who were passing through town. We met at a coffee shop on the outskirts of town, about 30 miles from where Marcus and Olivia lived. As my friends and I caught up over espressos, I spotted Marcus walking in, with a woman who definitely wasn't Olivia. I ducked my head, not wanting a family interaction to cut into my limited time with my friends. Marcus didn't see me. He and the woman sat in a corner booth, talking intently. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language spoke volumes. She touched his arm frequently. He leaned in close when she spoke. They shared food from the same plate. I told myself this could be innocent, a colleague, a friend, a cousin I hadn't met. But then they moved to leave, and I saw Marcus place his hand on her ass as they walked out. Through the window, I watched them kiss beside their cars before driving away in separate vehicles. My friends noticed my distraction and asked what was wrong. I made an excuse about remembering an unfinished work project. After they left, I sat in my car in the parking lot, trying to process what I'd seen. Marcus, the perfect family man, was having an affair. I decided to follow the woman's car. She drove to a small apartment complex about 15 minutes away. I wrote down the address and her license plate number. Over the next week, I did some investigating. Her name was Danielle, fake name, 38, a physical therapist who had worked with Marcus when he injured his shoulder coaching last year. Based on social media activity and coffee shop receipts I managed to glimpse, they had been meeting regularly for at least 6 months. My first instinct was to tell Rachel, but I hesitated. The siblings had such a twisted sense of loyalty that I couldn't predict how she would react. Would she believe me? So I developed a plan. I learned that Marcus and Danielle met at the same coffee shop every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the days when Olivia took their daughters to gymnastics and dance classes. I befriended a barista named Kyle by leaving increasingly generous tips. Eventually, I explained that I needed his help to expose a cheater. He agreed to assist, probably more for the extra money than moral reasons. Kyle helped me organize a customer appreciation day at the coffee shop, with games and prizes scheduled for a Thursday afternoon when I knew Marcus and Danielle would be there. I then invited the entire family to meet me at that coffee shop for what I described as a surprise announcement. Rachel was suspicious but intrigued. Olivia readily agreed, mentioning that her daughter's classes had been canceled that day anyway. Rachel's parents and Ethan with his fiancée Lucia all confirmed they would come. Marcus was the only one who declined, saying he had work commitments. I pretended to be disappointed but said I understood. When Thursday arrived, I gathered everyone except Marcus and drove them to the coffee shop. Rachel grew increasingly tense as we approached, repeatedly checking her phone. I asked if something was wrong, and she quickly said no, but her knuckles were white around her phone case. We arrived just as the coffee shop's couples challenge game was starting. Kyle had arranged for Danielle and Marcus to be selected as contestants. They were answering questions about each other while my family walked through the door. The final question asked how long they had known each other, and Danielle answered since last April when Marcus came in for physical therapy on his shoulder. Kyle then presented them with the grand prize, a gift basket and a framed photo Kyle had taken of them together on a previous visit, with a caption about them being the coffee shop's most regular Tuesday to Thursday couple. Olivia stopped cold in the doorway. Rachel's parents looked from Marcus to Olivia and back again. Ethan muttered something that sounded like a curse. Lucia gripped his hand tightly. Marcus saw us all standing there. The color drained from his face. Danielle, not yet understanding what was happening, accepted the gift basket with a bright smile. Then she noticed the frozen people by the door and the way Marcus was staring, horrified, at our group. Olivia turned and walked out without saying a word. Marcus ran after her, abandoning Danielle with the gift basket still in her hands. Rachel's parents followed them outside. Rachel stayed rooted to the spot, staring at Danielle with an expression I couldn't read. I went outside to check on Olivia. Marcus was trying to talk to her beside her car, but she kept shaking her head and backing away. Rachel's father stood between them, his hand firmly on Marcus's chest, keeping him from getting closer to Olivia. Rachel's mother had her arm around Olivia's shoulders. When I returned inside, I found Rachel and Ethan arguing intensely in hushed voices. When they saw me, they stopped abruptly. Danielle had disappeared. The drive home was silent. When we arrived, Rachel exploded. She accused me of humiliating her family on purpose. I asked why she was more concerned about Marcus's humiliation than Olivia's betrayal. Rachel wouldn't meet my eyes when I asked if she had known about the affair. Her silence was my answer. I packed a bag and drove to a hotel. Rachel called repeatedly, but I didn't answer. Ethan texted me, asking to meet for a drink. We met at a bar near my hotel, where he confirmed my suspicions. Rachel had known about the affair for months. Marcus had convinced her that his marriage to Olivia was essentially over and that they were staying together for the kids. He had claimed that Olivia understood the arrangement. Ethan hadn't believed this story, but Rachel had chosen to accept Marcus's version of events. Ethan apologized for not telling me sooner. He had urged Marcus to end the affair and had tried to convince Rachel to stop enabling their brother, but the older siblings had always stuck together against him. I returned home after 3 days. Rachel tried to explain her actions, saying she had been protecting her brother while he figured things out. I asked her what would happen if I decided to figure things out with another woman. She had no answer. Over the next few weeks, the family fractured along new lines. Olivia filed for separation and took the girls to stay with her parents. Marcus moved in with Rachel's parents, who surprisingly took his side, saying that marriages go through rough patches and Olivia was overreacting. Ethan and Lucia firmly supported Olivia, often babysitting the girls so Olivia could meet with her lawyer or just have time alone. Rachel and I spoke only when necessary and slept in separate rooms. I couldn't look at her without seeing her complicity in her brother's cheating. Update 1. 2 weeks after the coffee shop incident, Rachel asked if we could talk. I braced myself for more excuses or accusations. Instead, she asked if Marcus could stay with us for a while. Her parents were starting to get frustrated with his presence, especially since he wasn't making any effort to reconcile with Olivia. He couldn't stay with Danielle as apparently Danielle had broken things off after the public exposure and he needed a place to stay. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The request was so absurd that laughter burst out before I could control it. Rachel looked wounded by my reaction, which only made me laugh harder. When I finally regained composure, I asked her if she was serious about wanting her cheating brother, the man who had ruined his family and was partly responsible for the current state of our marriage, to live in our house. Rachel didn't see the problem. Marcus was family, she argued, and families stood by each other no matter what. I pointed out that Marcus hadn't stood by Olivia, and Rachel hadn't stood by me when she kept her brother's secret. The argument escalated. Rachel revealed that Marcus had told her Olivia was emotionally abusive and distant, which had driven him to seek comfort elsewhere. According to Marcus, Danielle had been a sympathetic ear who understood his struggles in a way his wife never had. I told Rachel I would only consider letting Marcus stay with us if he admitted these abuse allegations to Olivia's face, in front of the entire family. If Olivia was truly abusive, it should be addressed openly so everyone could support Marcus appropriately. Rachel jumped at this condition, immediately calling Marcus to set up the meeting. Olivia agreed to attend, bringing her parents as support. The meeting was scheduled for the following evening at Ethan and Lucia's house. When the time came, everyone gathered in Ethan's living room. Olivia sat calmly, Marcus slouched in a chair opposite them, while Rachel's parents stood behind him. Ethan and Lucia served drinks but stayed notably silent. Rachel kept glancing at me nervously. I opened the discussion by explaining that Marcus had alleged emotional abuse in his marriage, which he felt justified his relationship with Danielle. I then invited Marcus to elaborate on these allegations directly to Olivia. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He mumbled something about feeling unsupported and misunderstood. Olivia watched him steadily, not interrupting. When pressed for specific examples of abuse, Marcus grew defensive and vague. Eventually, he admitted that Olivia hadn't been abusive, he had just felt neglected because she focused so much on their daughters. Rachel looked stunned. Her brother had lied to her, and she had believed him without question. Olivia finally spoke, calmly listing all the ways she had supported Marcus over their marriage, taking on the majority of childcare, maintaining their home, working part-time to supplement their income while he pursued his coaching career, and postponing her own ambitions. She described how Marcus would disappear for hours without explanation, gaslight her when she questioned discrepancies in his schedule, and prioritize his siblings' needs over his family's. By the end of the meeting, Rachel's parents apologized to Olivia. Ethan looked vindicated. Marcus left alone, refusing Rachel's offer to stay with us. That night, Rachel cried for hours. She had built her identity around being part of this perfect, close-knit family, and now she had to face the reality that her brother wasn't the man she thought he was, and their family wasn't what she had always believed. Update 2. A month passed. Marcus found an apartment across town and started therapy, allegedly to work on himself before attempting reconciliation with Olivia. Rachel and I began marriage counseling, trying to rebuild trust and establish healthier boundaries with her family. Olivia filed for divorce, seeking primary custody of the girls with generous visitation for Marcus. The proceedings were remarkably civil, with both parties prioritizing their daughter's well-being. Olivia even defended Marcus when her parents spoke negatively about him in front of the children. Rachel's parents struggled to redefine their relationship with their son. They had always placed him on a pedestal, and watching him fall from grace forced them to confront their own role in enabling his behavior. They started attending family therapy sessions with Ethan and Rachel, noticeably excluding Marcus from these meetings. Ethan and Lucia moved forward with their wedding plans, though the family drama had cast a shadow over the preparations. They decided to have a small destination wedding with just a few close friends rather than the large family celebration originally planned. The most significant change was in Rachel. She started individual therapy in addition to our marriage counseling. Through this work, she began to recognize how her family's dynamic had shaped her understanding of relationships and boundaries. She admitted that she had always placed her brother's needs above mine because that was what she had been taught to do. One evening, she showed me her phone and the dozens of missed calls from Marcus. She had been limiting contact with him, setting boundaries for perhaps the first time in their relationship. Instead of dropping everything when he called with a crisis, she referred him to his therapist. When he showed up unannounced at our house, she told him he needed to call before visiting. These changes weren't easy. Rachel struggled with guilt and occasionally backslid into old patterns. Marcus alternated between respecting her boundaries and testing them, often claiming that she was abandoning him when he needed her most. During this period, I kept my distance from Marcus. We saw each other at necessary family functions but didn't speak beyond basic pleasantries. He never apologized for the wedding tuxedo incident or for putting Rachel in the position of keeping his affair secret from me. Olivia, surprisingly, reached out to me. We met for coffee, at a different shop from the one where the exposure had happened. She thanked me for bringing the affair to light, saying that while the revelation had been painful, it forced her to confront issues she had been ignoring for years. She had started a full-time position where she had previously worked part-time and was looking into completing the master's degree she had abandoned when she got pregnant with their first daughter. When our coffee cups were empty, Olivia checked her watch and mentioned she needed to pick up the girls from their dance class. As we walked to the parking lot, she paused by her car and extended her hand. "No hard feelings," she said. "What you did took guts." We shook hands, and I watched her drive away, struck by how differently things had turned out than I'd expected. That's where I am right now. Reddit. Thanks for reading, Reddit. Writing this out has been therapeutic. My relationship with Rachel is still a work in progress, but we're both committed to building something healthier than what came before. Sometimes it takes a family falling apart for people to see what needs to be fixed.